Good afternoon and welcome to The Rundown. I am your host, Captivating Christian, and here are some of your top stories for today, the 17th of August. Biden and Trump's matchup tightens as enthusiasm hits an all-time high. The House Committee calls for the Postmaster General to testify on the USPS changes. The changes have stoked fears that they are aimed at holding up the mail-in election ballots. And Chinese cities had found the coronavirus in frozen foods imported. The WHO organization downplays the infection risks. And Alabama Public Housing puts whites in high-rise towers and says that blacks prefer substandard garden units. And a document also reveals that the federal agencies monitored the Black Lives Matter demonstrators but ignored white supremacist involvement in violent protests. And a woman projects poop all over the Walmart because she got caught shoplifting. Let's get to the news. Joe Biden's lead over Donald Trump among registered voters has significantly narrowed since June, according to a new CNN poll. Even as the former vice president maintained an advantage over the president on several issues, and including his choice for Senator Kamala Harris as a running mate has earned him largely positive views. And on the eve of the party's convention, a majority of voters, 53%, are extremely ecstatic about voting in this year's election, which is a new high in the CNN polling in presidential election cycles. This hasn't happened since back in 2003. Overall, 50% of registered voters back Biden and Harris ticket, while 46% say that they support Trump and Pence. Right at all the poll margins, there's a minus of 4% for error. Among the 72% of voters who say that they will either extremely or very enthusiastic about voting this fall, Biden's advantage over Trump widened to 53% to Trump's 46%. It is narrow, however, among those voters who live in the states that will have the most impact on the Electoral College this fall. Harris has joined the ticket with a narrowly positive favoring, rating 41% having a favorable view and 38% unfavorable, which is an improvement since May, when 32% of Americans say that they thought of her in a positive light and 33% saw her in a negative light. Biden's selection of Harris is rated as excellent or pretty good by most, with a rating of 52%, and 57% say it reflects favorable on Biden's ability to make important presidential decisions. Most say she is qualified to be president should that be necessary at 57%. And a majority at 62% say that her selection does not have much effect on their vote. People of color, though, are more likely than white people to say her selection makes them more likely to back Biden. 28% among people of color and 18% among whites. Once again, good afternoon and welcome to those of you who've joined me for the rundown. In this portion, I do my personal commentary on the stories of the afternoon. First, want to say welcome to anybody who's new. Please like, share, and subscribe. And please make sure you share if you want to be the representative of the day. Every shared video makes you a representative of the day. All right, so let's get right into it. The first story up is the new poll showing that the presidential race between the incumbent president, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden, the former vice president, seems to be heating up and getting kind of close. Now, do we really pay attention to the polls? Not really. After 2016, I think the polling could be kind of in one ear, out the other. Only because they only poll a certain number of people, and to be very honest, on election day, the voting atmosphere of the people can change. We can already side-eye a lot of people the same way we did in 2016 when they said they was voting for one candidate and actually went to the voting booths and voted for another. So, we'll see how this plays out, and if in fact the polls were correct, but they are already showing that it is going to be a very tight race, margin of a couple percentage points either way. So we shall see. My only concern is that we get out the vote as best as we can, even with the blockages that this administration and his handlers are doing. We need to make sure we get out and vote in full force. Top Democrats in the U.S. Congress on Sunday called on President Donald Trump's appointed Postmaster General to testify this month on changes that have stoked fears that they are aimed at holding up the mail-in ballot ahead of November's election. The Postal Service's internal watchdog has begun investigating a wave of cost-cutting kickoffs by the Postmaster General, Louis DeJoy, that have slowed down mail delivery around the country. This alarming lawmakers ahead of November 3rd's election, when about half of the U.S. voters could cast ballots by mail. Congressional Democrats call on DeJoy, a donor of the Republican President Donald Trump's, and U.S. Postal Service Chairman Robert Duncan to testify in an August 24th committee hearing. Democrats have accused Trump, who is trailing the Democratic nominee Joe Biden in the polls, of trying to hamstring the cash-strapped Postal Service to supply mail-in voting. Trump himself said on Thursday that he held up talks with Congress around a fresh round of coronavirus stimulus funding to block Democrats from providing more funds for mail-in voting and election infrastructure. Trump later walked back those comments, saying that he would not veto a bill that included funds for the Postal Service. The White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, told CNN on Sunday that he would agree to a $10 billion to $25 billion in fresh postal funding, for Democrats had sought $25 billion. Nancy Pelosi may recall lawmakers from a summer recess to address the changes in the Postal Service, a Democrat congressional aide said on Saturday. And this particular story is a story to definitely keep your eye on. The Congress may be coming back early from their recess to have a sit-down talk, a hearing with the Postmaster General. Mr. DeJoy, who is a Trump supporter as well as a campaign backer, he is in charge of the post office. He claims that he's been trying to cut back the Postal Service to save it money. However, he himself owns a logistic company who has worked previously with the Postal Service as a third party. So it also makes you side-eye like, are you doing all this dismantling because you want to take it over completely and run the Postal Service yourself? However, have a whole new name or what have you. But during this election season, he is helping Donald Trump with making sure that a lot of the mail-in ballots don't get either to be counted in time or get to the people who actually cast their ballot. He has been secretly removing all of the staple post office little blue boxes that you would see on the corners of your neighborhoods or at the shopping centers outside. He has been removing those in his effort to save the post office money. How I don't see how that would save the post office money. Also, he has been removing the sorting machines from a lot of the locations. The sorting machines are useful because they help sort the mail. About a couple thousand an hour, a couple 100,000 an hour, I believe the estimate was that the machine does. So, with that, it's just a kind of group effort to suppress the vote. And for anybody who think, oh, well, maybe he did not participate in any kind of campaign dealings where he looked for help to win the 2016 election, it's in plain sight. He is doing it every single day. So, I believe he got help in 2016 and he's getting help in 2020. And the best way we can fight against it is to vote and not sit back and sit this one out. We can't afford it. Hey, this is Captivating Christian here to remind you to tune in to Politics and Wellness every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Politics and Wellness every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. You never know what you might get. Two cities in China have found traces of the new coronavirus in cargoes of imported frozen foods. Local authorities say on Thursday that although the World Health Organization downplayed the risk of the virus entering the food chain, a sample taken from the surface of frozen chicken wings imported into the southern city of Shenzhen from Brazil, as well as samples from the outer packaging of the frozen shrimp sold in the northwestern city of Shen, have tested positive for the virus, local Chinese authorities say. Shenzhen authorities identified the chicken as originating from a plant owned by Aurora, Brazil, the third largest poultry and pork export. As confirmed, COVID-19 cases continue to rise globally. The discoveries raise a fresh concern that the coronavirus that causes the disease could and can spread on the surface and enter the food chain. A day earlier, officials stated investigating whether the first coronavirus or COVID-19 cases in New Zealand in more than 3 months were imported by freight. Viruses can survive up to 2 years at temperatures of minus 20 degrees Celsius. But scientists and officials say that there is no strong evidence so far that the coronavirus can spread via frozen food. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration and Agricultural Department say in a joint statement that there is no evidence that people can contract COVID-19 from food or from food packaging. And this is a story to particularly keep your eye on. I've done a story previously about the Tyson's Food Corporation, their meat packing plant, with the employees coming down with the COVID-19, otherwise known as the coronavirus, right? So there has been frozen food tested in China that happened to have the coronavirus. It came from a meat packing plant in Brazil. However, the World Health Organization has downplayed the fact that the coronavirus can be spread through food. However, we don't know how it's getting spread. So it is definitely something to keep your eye on. I wouldn't discount it at this point, and I wouldn't count it. I would just definitely keep my eyes and ears open. I will bring you any updates if we find out anything. This could be just to add fuel to the already burning fire of this lack of anything that this president or this administration does to protect the people from the coronavirus, but who knows? But I'm not going to put it past anybody. It's out there, so I will, do my best to give it to you. So here we have it. There has been frozen food tested positive for the coronavirus. Again, the World Health Organization does not consider it to be a link to the coronavirus in any way, and don't think that frozen foods can get the coronavirus or have the coronavirus on it. However, in freezing, a virus can stay. So it is possible. It's definitely not impossible. So it is possible for a virus to sit on something frozen for some time. Now that brings a lot of concern and question even into meatpacking facilities when people are sick. That is it possible that it could be passed from person to actually touching something and it then become contaminated, which also brings a whole lot of other questions. So like I said, we will stay focused, and any new updates I come about with this story or something pertaining to it, you guys will be the first to know. And be sure to join Jay Wilson, Rebel Sun, The Official Kingpin, Conscious TV, and Captivating Christian this and every Thursday at 6:45 Central Standard Time, 7:45 Eastern Standard Time for the Gentleman's Panel, where we are not afraid to go there and discuss an array of topics. See you there. According to a federal review, the Public Housing Authority in Alabama provided white people with a riverfront tower with scenic views and other amenities, while black people were given less luxurious housing. Their excuse: black people didn't like high-rises. The Associated Press reported that the Housing Authority in Alabama settled a discrimination lawsuit for $200,000, which will be distributed to all of those who were given lower standardized housing allegedly because of the color of their skin. This comes after the Housing and Urban Development study determined that 94% of the Decatur Housing Authority's units in 2 towers with nice views and other perks were occupied by white tenants. The developments provided subsidized homes for low-income elderly people. Minorities on the waiting list to get into the towers were passed over. Other units were filled by white people, the report says. Authorities worked repeatedly to explain the lack of black residents in the waterfront building by saying that elderly black tenants did not like high-rises buildings and prefer to live in the garden-style units so they can sit there on their porch and come and go as they please, according to a letter from HUD. Along with the $200,000 settlement, the Housing Authority promises to upgrade the Westgate Gardens, which is largely occupied by black residents, and at an estimated cost of $1 million. Now, this story is quite concerning. I want to know, again, who's surprised? I'll wait to see it for people who are surprised that in Alabama, as well as many other states, a lot of the housing programs known as HUD, the Urban Housing Program, has been giving white applicants more luxury living than they have been giving applicants, black applicants or people of color. And then first, being that this is in Alabama, I'm not surprised. It's Alabama, so it doesn't surprise me. However, if it's happening in Alabama, you can be darn sure it's happening other places. So my best thought to you all is, if you are on the program, to look into that. You do not have to, just because you need help or you may need help in your living situation, you shouldn't have to just settle for anything. And you should be able to at least live comfortably, regardless if it is on some kind of assistance, because that doesn't make any sense. And then for the audacity for that program to say that black people don't like high rises because they want to sit on the porch and be able to come and go as they please. It's almost like saying like that whole black people eat watermelon and chicken kind of thing. What are we gonna sit on the porch and eat watermelon and chicken? Like, I really don't. The racist undertones of all of this stuff is really starting to get on my last nerve. Everything should not be, well, that's the way it's always been. It's time for a change. It's a change in attitude, a change in thought perception. That's the only way we're gonna actually grow as a people, a nation, or whatever we wind up being. Because this is getting a little bit out of hand. Emails and recent records obtained by BuzzFeed News show that federal agents have been monitoring the Black Lives Matter protests, as well as social media accounts of possible protesters and activists, for intelligence on upcoming demonstrations. Of course, what's missing out of these documents, authorized by the Federal Protection Services Division, which is a part of the Department of Homeland Security, is the mention of white supremacists. In the hundreds of pages of emails and intelligence reports, there are only single explicit mention of the white supremacist group or other far-right extremists, despite the fact that their presence at the protest was known by federal law enforcement officials. BuzzFeed reports the egregiousness of the white supremacist activity connected to the violent protests began absent in the Federal Services Protections Report is compounded by the fact that the agency describes the Black Lives Matter demonstrators as they were a doomsday cut from the scene of the Netflix The Umbrella Academy. The emails from the Federal Protection Services commander in Philadelphia are starkly alarming. The subject line in one of the emails is ongoing violence towards law enforcement. They are discussing burning down the Federal Reserve. The mission of the FPS is to prevent, protect, and respond to and recover from terrorism, criminal acts, or other hazardous threats to the U.S. government and its infrastructure. Despite the characterization of the Black Lives Matter protest, the FPS intelligence research specialist wrote in one of the emails that the department has not found any information regarding planned violent destruction at any events. Civil Liberties Director of Electronic Frontier Foundation, David Green, spoke to BuzzFeed about the surveillance and how eerie it is, similar to a plot in the movie Minority Report. In at least one case, authorities used social media to try to find the identity of the protesters who may have been witness to a Molotov cocktail being thrown at an ICE facility whose location is redacted in the documents. The report references high-profile vehicles ramming in France, Spain, the UK, and New York City, as well as the 2017 attack in Charlottesville, Virginia, in which a white supremacist killed a protester. But the report gets the state wrong, placing Charlottesville in North Carolina, and makes no reference to white supremacy. In fact, there would be at least 18 incidences of vehicles ramming during the Black Lives Matter protest, but none tied to the Islamic extremists. Rather, a Ku Klux Klan leader was convicted of one such incident in June in Virginia. And here we talk about more racial disparities and discrimination, dealing with how groups are watched. We have the Black Lives Matter movement, protesters as well as activists being watched, not only through other things, surveillance, but through their social medias. This is a huge problem. Like it brought up in the article, the Minority Report. If anybody has seen the movie, it was about these programs in which they try to stop crimes before they happen by going through all of this social data and all this kind of information to kind of stop things before they happen, which was totally ridiculous. The whole movie premise, you kind of find out that there was a glitch in the system. Somebody was feeding the information out so the police can actually go after particular people. But anyway, that's exactly what they're doing here. They are targeting certain groups, just like they've always targeted certain groups of black groups or people of color, like the Black Panthers and anything like that. Anything where it starts to gain a little power and momentum and voice to the people, they go after and try to dehumanize these particular groups. However, when their groups are allowed to walk freely, counter protests with no problem, go into government buildings fully armed and threaten lawmakers with no problems or no recourse or nothing whatsoever. I feel like, it's blatantly disrespectful. Even to the point where you are literally putting false lies about people attacking federal buildings and wanting to blow up things and all this kind of nature. And this is like, that's so far from the truth. Let's not forget who blew up a federal building. Wasn't his name Timothy McVeigh that blew up that federal building back in, 93, 92, 93, somewhere around there? That was not anybody in any kind of black movement. That was a white man involved in white supremacy. They never want to take responsibility for the terrorism they cause or the domestic terrorism that they cause, but they always want to point the finger at protest groups or peaceful protest groups and make it seem like they're the agitators, when it's been proven time and time. Look at Charlottesville when they plowed the car, or the gentleman during the recent protest who took his truck and plowed it through and tried to plow it through a group of people marching on the freeway. So, it's blatant domestic terrorism, but they never want to take responsibility for the terrorism that they cause. They like to kind of glass over it like it's nothing. However, they get to walk freely while other people are being so scrutinized. That's kind of crazy to me. 41-year-old Dominica Darling of Beechwood, Ohio, was arrested after shoplifting from Walmart 2 days in a row. But the real story is her unique, profoundly messy reaction to said arrest. Darling was spotted shoplifting from Walmart on April 3rd, but was able to make it out of the store without getting caught. However, store security and police were giving her photo. So when she came back the next day looking for more free stuff, authorities were ready. Darling was apprehended by the Walmart Loss and Prevention Office and taken to the back of the office area, where she was detained. Darling had stolen about $238 worth of items. According to the Walmart Loss Prevention Office, who were watching her, Darling raised her dress up to the midsection and began projecting defecation all over the office while screaming she had coronavirus and needed treatment. The Walmart Loss Prevention Office immediately retreated into the corner of the office to avoid getting hit with Darling's flying poop and called for backup. Officers arrived and cuffed Darling, who pooped again in the store's entrance. Ultimately, Darling pled guilty to 2 counts of violating the county's stay-at-home order, which specifies that any person coming into the county from out of town must be quarantined for 14 days, as so not to spread the coronavirus, and 2 counts of larceny. All charges are misdemeanors. Darling spent 4 days in a Haywood County detention center, but otherwise was not sentenced to any jail time. She was given 45 days, a suspended sentence, and 12 months of unsupervised probation. You know, a lot of us can complain about having a shitty day, but I think this one takes the cake. So this woman literally was stealing from the Walmart, and she went back. You know, I guess it was like the first time she got away with it. They didn't stop her, so she went back again to do it again. However, they noticed that she did steal, so they took, a picture of her from their cameras, and they reported to the local authorities. When she was noticed in the store again, they then called the police, and the police was probably on their way. So when they apprehended her and put her in the back room where the loss prevention office is, I guess, where they have you, write down your name and that you stole stuff and get your ID and all that other kind of mess while they waiting for the police. She proceeded to lift up her mid-dress, it was probably a sundress too, and began to shit and like projectile shit, almost, I guess, like diarrhea or something. Which, I mean, was gross. And I don't even know why the people stayed in the office in the corner. That's definitely, and no offense to my white folks, but that definitely must be a white thing, because a lot of black people would have got the hell out of Dodge, okay? And just left her locked in that room by her damn self. Because there ain't no way in the world I'm staying in there while somebody's shitting. It's not even that serious. That's gross. And then the fact that they came in and handcuffed her, and she shit at the front entrance again. So yeah, she definitely had to have on some old nasty sundress, but I just think that that's extra disgusting. So you wasn't crazy enough to steal, but when you got caught, you went crazy. I mean, full on crazy. I mean, I guess it worked, but then with the coronavirus going around, well, I mean, would they really put you in jail anyway? So I'm not sure. I think maybe she just happened to luck up and get lucky. However, I wouldn't try it again, and that office is probably never going to be the same. So, whenever we think we're having a shitty day, trust somebody's having a far more shitty day than we are. And with that was the lightheartedness of the day. So hopefully everybody have a great day. Please like, share, and subscribe. Again, for those of you, anybody new, welcome. For my other state representatives who come all the time, thank you so much for your support and your continued support for the channel and what we do here at CCNTV. All right, peace. Once again, thank you for watching CCN Midday News. Hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit that notification button so you will never miss another news update. Have a great day. Peace.